Well, welcome to this extra special edition of Dessert with Dan. Tonight actually is Dessert with Dan and Rob. This is Rob Twist. Rob has been the, what would you say, the manager of the...
We'll just call it the project manager.
The project manager of the big project of the summer. There have been several big projects of the summer, but the big project of the summer most of you haven't seen, and that's been the renovation of our church. And since we are on schedule to be able to have church and the Mass in the church this weekend, starting this weekend, we thought we would have this edition of Dan and to be able to talk about the church. And nobody can tell you better about the renovation of the church than Rob Twist. Rob has done an extraordinary job. You kept count of the hours that you've spent managing this?
I have not.
He has not, but I have seldom seen a volunteer more suited for the task than this complex, difficult task than I've seen for Rob. Rob has just been gifted by God with the gifts that are absolutely needed, both technically and people, people person-wise and faith-wise and everything else like that. And just a sample of this would be that one of the things that about a month and a half ago or so, anyway, Rob presented to me was this particular piece of wood. Rob is also a woodworker, and he gave me that. And if you can just take a look at that and see if you can identify some of those materials and where they were in the church that we have known for the last almost 25 years. So stop and look. What was the fabric on the pew? There's some tile there. Where was that? Just take a look. Isn't it artistically done and everything? And so Rob's the kind of person who, in the middle of all other kind of work, stops to think to be able to do that and present that to me as a memento of our church. So that gives you an introduction to Rob. We really do want this to be, Rob knows so many facts and figures and so much about this project, he could fill up much more than the half hour that we've got for this particular program. But we really want to center in on what you want to know, so that if it's, we're going to even start by taking a couple of your questions, answering a couple of your questions, and then give it an overview. But we really want, and James, interrupt us as you have questions coming in, because we really, neither of us want this to be one just long exposition of us talking. So I'm going to stop talking for right now, and we've got a question here that you've already given us.
All right, Rob, we've got a question from one of our viewers at home. What is going on with the green fabric on the walls?
Well, right now, nothing, other than we've ordered new blue fabric to cover those up that will match the carpet in the church. We waited till the end on that because Adam wanted to understand the acoustics in the church. Those are acoustic panels back there meant to absorb sound. And so Adam wanted the church to be a brighter sound and have more bounce to the sound. So one of the options we were considering was adding a hard surface over the acoustic panels to make the sound better in the church. If we did that, that was one solution. To take some of the details out of it, we decided that the church sounds great with the hard pews, without the fabric seats, without the carpet under the pews that we had before. And so Adam says the best solution is just cover what we've got there with fabric and let the acoustics from those two panels remain as they were. So we've got some new fabric on order, and that should go in about 3 weeks.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. We've got Judy chiming in. Judy wants to know, what has been the most expensive part of this whole process so far?
The two big expenses in here were the new pews and the flooring. And I can't tell you exactly what the flooring is without looking at my notes, but it's in the $150,000 to $175,000 range. And the pews were rated $170,000.
And let the German pastor come in on this particular time. Number one, remember that's the flooring for the whole building. Right.
Yeah,
practically.
one thing for anybody that hasn't been part of this is it's the whole building. It's the main assembly area of the church that we all think of as the church, but it's the gathering area, it's the work sacristy, vesting sacristy, reconciliation room, chapel, library, the 2 classrooms, the hallway between the classrooms, and the music room. So really everything but the janitor's closet and the bathroom has been done.
And another thing from the just expense and money point of view, so we are, in these COVID times when collections, by the way, we finally, gotten a real handle around budgetary issues. And collections, all told, were about 7% less than last year.
Very, very close to last year's numbers, yeah.
Yeah, very close to last year. So that, that's great. We certainly need all we can get, and we're going to be running a deficit budget this next year, and that's going to be a big reason for it is because collections are down, but still, they're not like having totally tanked. So God bless you, those of you who are keeping up sacrifices. We really need them. But anyway, so you stop and think, why are we spending all this money, to renovate the church during this particular time? Well, the reason is that even before COVID was thought of, you may remember that through an extensive parish consultation process, we set aside about $175,000 for church renovation, and then discovered really to do it right would take a whole lot more, so we put that on hold. So we had that money restricted for that purpose. And then we got generous gifts to be able to fill in all the rest of it, unsolicited, absolutely grace of God gift that was given for that specific purpose and no other purpose. And so that's the reason why we were able to do this. And so it's just this marvelous gift to rejoice in.
All right, we got a question here for Rob. You mentioned a moment ago, Rob, about the restrooms. What work, if any, has been done with those on this project?
We did not have enough money to really do anything with the restrooms, so nothing.
All right. Can you talk to us about the...
Before we go on, I forgot something really important. This is dessert with Dan. Dessert or cupcakes from Caramanda. They were such a hit last time at our house that I was in charge of the meal tonight. And we got cupcakes for dessert, so that was it. All right, next question.
All righty. We got some folks asking about the chairs. Are there going to be chairs on the back wall like we had with the green?
There will not be chairs in the back wall. We have some chairs that are interspersed in the pews, which for people that like chairs, they come in 2 different heights. One is a standard height, one is about 3 inches taller. So anybody that has difficulty standing up, that gets them 3 inches closer to a standing position than they normally would be in. Also in the back row of the pews, we've widened the space between the last row and the next to the last row. And the back pew has, so it's easier to be in. You can walk between the pews with a walker sideways if you need to. And there's armrests in the pew, which also will help people stand up more easily. There are 8 wheelchair spots built into the layout of the pews. And altogether, I think there are, wrote down the number here, 44 accessible seats. So they're somewhat accessible, better than a standard pew seat. So we took the chairs that were in the back row and tried to fill the need within the pew set so that the people that sit in those seats don't have, the people that are up walking to the bathroom, walking in front of them, and they can be more engaged in the service itself.
All right, we've got a question now for Father Dan. Do you have a nephew with the same name in Somerset?
I do not. But there is Dan Knoll, athletic and good-looking and smart, therefore obviously not related to me, who was in dental school. You went to Center, dental school at UK. There's a Dan Knoll, spelled the same way as well. So, and he's a fine, fine young man, and I bet that may be he.
All right, Robin, can you talk to us about the area around the altar? That new tile up there looks awful slippery. Is that going to be slippery?
No. I mean, it'll be slippery if it's wet, and that was the purpose between, we have the home tile, which is a dull finish tile in the gathering area. So people that come in from the rain or come in with snow on their feet should, hopefully it won't be slippery. We'll have to have some walk-off mats there. By the time they get to the altar area, their feet should be dry, and it should be no different than walking on a hardwood floor or or something like that. Now, of course, it's slipperier than carpet, but normal walking should be fine. There's lots of churches that have polished marble in them, lots of cathedrals, and we felt that was a good look for the front of the church, for the altar area.
And we're gonna archive this, and we're gonna play this back the first time where we sprinkle with water and use the water right at the beginning of Mass. I splash water on there and I fall and I break my arm. We'll play this back for that and we'll laugh.
So anytime that Father Dan uses the holy water and sprinkles it, he's got to put the caveat out to everybody that they've got to be extra careful walking up on the altar, because it will be slippery when it's wet.
All right. And was anything done to the Adoration Chapel, Rob, during these renovations?
Yes, there's the perimeter tile and the old carpet was taken out, and this blue, gray, black tile that we have in this room in the main aisles in the church is also in the Adoration Chapel.
Tile or carpet?
Carpet.
Carpet.
They're carpet tiles. So if I get confused and say tile, the tile comes in 2 foot by 2 foot squares, so that if one of them gets damaged or gets wax on it at Christmas time from the candles, it can be replaced. It's not a hard tile, they're fabric tiles.
And also, those of you who are real familiar with the Eucharistic Chapel may have noticed, may not have, that even before May, one of our goals, after our consultation about the Eucharistic Chapel, was to make it more of a quiet place, so there could be people talking out in the gathering area rather than inside. And so we had already done things, so we increased there's no space between the floor and the bottom of the door anymore. All the things that you would do to make a room quieter, in addition to the carpet tile now and all. In my experience so far, of course, we haven't been under actual performance condition. It's a much quieter room when that door is closed, which is something that we all really wanted to be able to get to.
There's actually some real simple things that we did in there too, like between the wall, the oak wall and the bricks, it was never caulked. So there was an air gap in some cases, an 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch wide, and it was, just caulking those makes it much, much quieter. If anybody's interested, I did some YouTube research before we did that with an office door that is closed or is closed with like a foam seal on it. Huge difference. There's a whole lot of noise that comes through the crack in the door, and so we tried to seal those up, and people have noticed that it was much quieter.
That's all right. Next question here is actually for each of you. What has been your favorite part of the renovation project?
It's yet to come. It's filling the place up with people.
And that'll be partially realized when it, this weekend. But again, it's still gonna be weird this weekend. I mean, coming in just the way, with all the restrictions that we've got, So my favorite part will be the first time that it's full of people singing, and it's a vibrant sound in a beautiful space, and it's just wonderful. So that's yet to come, because for me, you want a good church building, but the church is really the people, and so I want to see people using it. It's beautiful, but it'll be what's really beautiful about the church is you.
In my case, I would say it was kind of the evolution of the design. That as we started, we had, like Father Dan said, $150,000, $175,000 set aside, and then we started to study what we really needed to do. And as we went from the refurbishing the old pews to coming up with new pews, it gave us the opportunity to change the layout of the pews and gave us a chance to step back and say, what could we do differently that would make it a better space, that would make it more accessible, that would make people get more out of the time that they came to church. And so having the ability to add those little aisles in the back of the pews so that people would actually use the middle of the 33-foot pews in the back was a good thing. Adding the spaces for the handicap chairs, the wheelchair accessibility, those things are things that it was interesting talking to the pew manufacturer, that even though people think about those things, he had never dealt with a church that actually sat down and thought as long and hard about how did we change the layout as we have to make it more usable for everyone, as opposed to really usable just for people that were very mobile.
Speaking of layouts, Rob, next question here is, we had estimated about 144 people we could accommodate with social distancing for Mass in the gym. What number are we looking at for Mass here in the church?
I've done some calculations, and it depends on what the size of the groups of people that come in. The smallest number is obviously if everybody comes in as a single. If you come in as 2 people as a group, you get more people in, 4 people as a group. I estimated about 200 is the number, but that really depends on how many people come in with each group. If you get families coming in, you'll get more people in, families with 5 or 6 people versus people that come in as units of 1.
Yeah, one of the things that's need to be understood, people oftentimes just go to say, okay, governor says 50% of capacity. So what's our capacity? Cut that in half, that's how many people we can have. No, it's 50% of capacity. Also, 6 foot distance around you. It's a six foot radius. Like if you've got an inner tube on that's 6 foot out from you, that's the other factor, and that's the factor that cuts the number down a lot and makes it so variable. If you've got a family unit that lives together, you don't need to be 6 feet apart from those people. You just need to be 6 feet apart from every other individual or family unit that's there. So, yeah, we're definitely limited more by the 6 foot than we are by that 1/2 of the capacity.
Sounds like that'll be a lot of disinfecting. How are we going to go about disinfecting the wooden pews after Mass?
The pews will be wiped down with a disinfectant cleaning solution and then dried. From a new pew standpoint, we got to be very careful not to let that wetness stay on the pews very long, because it will affect the finish long term. And we're spending a whole lot of money on new pews. We don't want to do that, and yet we want to be clean so that everybody feels safe coming to Mass.
And this is where we're asking you to even up your game further. Those of you who have been coming to Mass have been spectacular in regard to wearing masks as you come in and being cooperative. At times when I know you didn't want to be cooperative on where they seated you and whatever else like that, and when to go to communion and all of the other stuff like that not a lot of us like, but it's the stuff that winds up keeping us safer. So we're continuing all. We'll be continuing all that. Single entry and all the entry will be still different and everything at all. But what we're going to ask you to do in addition to that, what we haven't been doing in the gym, is when you leave your space, put the kneeler down where you were. Have that be, just the kneelers only down in the spaces where you were, so that the cleaners know where to come and sanitize right away, rather than after every Mass having to sanitize the entire space only when a quarter of it's been used. So that's a routine we'll need to get into our heads. We'll announce it and everything, but that's another way you can help to contribute to keeping your home safe and lovely. Any other questions? All right, so now we get to the you know how oftentimes you come to presentations like this and the presenter says, we want to have lots of time for questions. And then they go ahead and they talk for, 85, 90% of the time, and there's time for 2 questions at the end. Well, we put the presentation at the end, and we're going to interrupt them anytime you've got questions. Please keep those coming. We're real serious about you being at the heart of this 30-minute period. So, what do you want to say? What would you say from the broad scope? What all has this renovation done? What is it?
You mean for the...
Yeah, what do you want to, yes, if you were given a general introduction to the renovation, and what else would you say that you haven't said?
Well, in addition to what I've said, I want to kind of talk about, I'd like to talk about where we went with the pews. So the old pews and the old chairs that were against the back wall, it was interesting to see, we offered those up to parishioners, and we actually gave away 22 pews, mostly to parishioners, and then after a period of time, we let outside people that wanted the pews. My big focus, and I did a lot of research with the city in terms of the city recycling department. We went to the diocesan outreach program to see, could somebody use the pews intact? And because our old pews were all different lengths, there really wasn't a good home for them. But one by one, there were 22 people that wanted individual pews. And then within the last couple of weeks, we put the green chairs up for people to come and get. and they were gone within about a day and a half. So people really wanted those, but it was interesting to find a home for the pews, and sadly the rest of it went into the landfill, but we tried our very best looking at habitat, looking at are there recycling places that would take them, is there another home for them where they could be just reused, and everything that we did, we tried to be as conscious of the environment as we could, is one of the things going out.
Just while you're on the pews, remind people of why we had to buy new pews and not have the old ones redone.
We started this, we've been actually planning this project for about 3 years, and in talking to various people, it was probably about a 50-50 mix between people that wanted padded pews again and people that wanted, hard wooden seats. And it was one of those things, well, how do we decide this? Because we got about a 50-50 mix. And Becky Brown, the school principal, said that, the kids come over to church once a week for Mass. And I said, yeah. And Becky said, do you know how often one of the kids gets sick in the church? And I said, no. She goes, well, about once a week. And I'm good at math, so I did once a week times, say, 40 weeks out of the year. The kids are in school times 25 years. And do you really know what you were sitting in those fabric seats? And so then all of a sudden it became about 95% positive they wanted wood seats. Anybody that I told that story to said they wanted wood seats. There was no more discussion. Everybody was happy with wood. I wasn't going to tell that, but it is a good story.
Oh, shoot. Oh, that's good.
Some of the things that I was also telling in the walking tour, if you didn't catch that, was in the library here, you notice that the shelves are painted behind us, which is kind of a modern design. They're painted white with a blue background. When you walked in here before, there was 4 different colors of wood. The shelves were one color, the woodwork was one color, the cabinets were one color, and the door was another color. And so that was part of the process of all of our design was let's have consistent colors that look like they go together and all through the church. So this was a space that we said was kind of special, and so that's the white painted here on the bookshelves. Behind us is a nice blue cabinets with a blue and white backsplash, but it's blues and grays throughout the entire building. And the only place where there's some green is like somebody mentioned earlier on those acoustic panels that will be recovered within the next couple of weeks.
And while we are here in the library parlor, and you see the books back behind you, a reason why these books are so throughout the years they've been cataloged so well and looked after so well, and the library's been in shape. It's been through the Herculean efforts. There have been a number of people involved, but the one who's really organized and done has been Pat Johnson, and we want to particularly remember Pat today, these days. Her husband Bob, who also volunteers in so many ways, heads up our St. Vincent de Paul Society, together with John Mitchell. If there's pictures that need to be taken in parish events, takes those, and there's all other kind of things behind the scene. Bob's, during this COVID time, has been diagnosed with cancer, and he's getting radiation treatments. And he shared that through some of us. He doesn't mind us sharing. So keep Bob in prayer today. He had treatments yesterday, today, and tomorrow, radiation for his cancer.
We got another question here for Rob. What are we looking at in terms of updates in coming years?
There are some maintenance projects that will be done actually relatively soon. If you hadn't noticed, there is a glass window behind the stained glass window. If you looked at the church from the outside, that is ordered and that's not ready to go yet. I've noticed, as I've done this project, I've started to notice other things that need to be done, such as the soffits in the church on the outside. If you look at them, some of those are starting to deteriorate. Somebody mentioned earlier about the bathrooms. Unfortunately, we didn't have the money to renovate those, but as you go into the bathrooms, the men's room is kind of that same blue-green that was in a lot of the church. And I found out when nobody else was in the church, I did look in the ladies' room, and it's pink in there. That may or may not be, a good long-term color, but You learn new things with every project, and I learned what color the ladies' room was. Those are the main things for this building here. If I had a true vision of the future, I would look at the parish office and say there's a lot of there's meeting space there that could probably be better used if nothing else. Where it's kind of an old house that's been converted to being the parish office. But there's no real plans for that. That's kind of Rob talking based on his facilities committee and things that we toss around, but that's somewhere way into the future.
Oh, then there's a whole, you don't want to be worried about the whole list of it. If buildings and grounds give you one, there's parking lot, we need to redo the parking lot, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots to go. And again, the building is 25 years, believe it or not, the new church is 25 years old. So that you're looking at, boilers and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah, I didn't mention that. There are 25 air conditioning units on this facility between the school and the church, and most of those are original equipment. So, into the future, that's probably one of the big expenditures that's next on the list. Father Dan mentioned the parking lot. We're looking at, there's a hole developing directly in front of the church that we need to do at least a repair on. But longer term, when you look at the parking lot, you can kind of see the spider webs and the cracking, and ultimately that's going to have to be resurfaced. It's not a tomorrow kind of a project, but given the size of it, that becomes a great deal of money.
Are there any upcoming plans for a super thorough cleaning of the bathrooms or just a complete overhaul down the line?
The whole church is getting a what I would call a deep cleaning, and they're working on that this week. I was in today, and it's clearly not deep enough yet. Like I said earlier, that's probably one of the biggest things that we've got to do before the end of this week. The bathrooms have been cleaned since the renovation began. And I'm not the expert on what a deep cleaning of a bathroom would be, but I'm going to say that they were thoroughly cleaned, and that was about 6 weeks ago, and they need to be thoroughly cleaned again.
All right. Well, let's see. Anything else you have that you think may be of interest that hasn't been said yet as we get into our final 90 seconds?
We've had this leak back in the work sacristy behind the altar that for years people have told me has been fixed. And shortly before we were going to replace the ceiling tile in the work sacristy, we had this huge 2 or 3 inch rain about 6 weeks ago. And the leak was obviously not fixed because the old ceiling tile got soaked and fell to the ground. And I was thrilled that we found out about it before we put the new ceiling tile on it. We did end up with a repair on the roof for the work sacristy, and that's complete. Luckily, it's not a big area, so it was only a few $1,000s. And then we put the new ceiling tile in, and hopefully everything will be watertight for many years to come. But roof leaks are hard, and finding the source of the leak is usually the biggest problem. So we hope that one's gone forever.
And I'm always glad to be in a church that has problems with that, leaks, because it always goes back to the power of water and what a symbol for baptism it is. It gets in there. We can, throughout our lives, resist whatever, think we've got it all done, and by God's grace finds a way to be able to get in there regardless. And God's grace certainly has gotten into us with the renovation of this building, the giftedness we've had, the support we've had of people, the great skills that have been brought to bear, and the people that have helped. And we give God praise and thanks for that, and look forward to being in the new church this weekend. As for now, thank you, Rob. And thank you for watching Dessert with Dan.